Hello, my name is Bill Berquist, Assistant Professor, South College. Welcome to Lecture 1 of Spreadsheet Application CST 1040. This first lecture will discuss the Excel application window, the ribbon at the top of the screen, the grid, what worksheets are all about, what you can do with an Excel spreadsheet, and build our first couple of worksheets. First off, a spreadsheet is a sort of a grid of columns and rows where you enter and edit data. Why would you want to use a spreadsheet? Well, spreadsheets are used to create numerous types of numerical type reports, like grade calculation sheets, budgets, loan amortization schedules, payroll reports, things of that nature. Your word processors are for your memos and your letters and your term papers, but all your numerical reports are done with a spreadsheet. Microsoft Excel is the most popular spreadsheet out there. There are other spreadsheets such as Quatra Pro, Lotus 123, which was popular back in the early 90s. Microsoft Works has a spreadsheet application built in, Star Office, Open Office. But again, Excel is the most popular. Let's start at the beginning of the application window here. The entire screen is called the application window, and that encompasses all the components of your application. At the very top here, sort of a newish feature with Excel 2010, also 27. If you're using 2007, Excel 2007, that's fine as well. But this one focuses on Excel 2010. At the very top, you've got your title bar, and this tells you your application name and your file name. In this case, it's Book 1. Below that is sort of a new feature since 2007, which is called the ribbon, the Microsoft ribbon. And that has all your commands up here. Let me click these different tabs. These are called your ribbon tabs. Review, View, Home. The Home tab is where we spend most of our time, so make sure that the Home tab is active on your application. A new change to 2010 is having the File menu over here. Now in Excel 2007 they had a little circular Office logo button. So if you're using Excel 2007 you're going to see a circular button instead of File. But they both are used to access the same thing. I'll click File here, and you can access all of your commands like save, save as, open, close, all your recent files, a new file, print, to bring up all of your print options. This is sort of a new feature with Excel, and they call this the backstage view. The backstage view. I'll click File again and get out of it. Now, even if you've used Excel spreadsheets before, this course is going to show you lots and lots of different tips and tricks and things. And you always learn something new. You always learn something new. A lot more better, faster, efficient ways of doing things. At the very top here, again, with our ribbon, are all your different commands. There's some tricks I want to show you about the ribbon. The first trick is that you can hide the ribbon. Hiding the ribbon just means to sort of have it turn off from the screen, and it's only active when you're using commands. For instance, I'll go ahead and double click the Home tab, and that causes the ribbon to disappear, to temporarily disappear. If I double click Home again, that brings it back. This is a common problem. Usually people hide it by accident. They double click a tab not thinking, and they end up hiding the ribbon and then not how to get it back again. But if you just simply double click the active tab like Home, that hides it, and then double clicking again brings it back. Another cool option is you can scroll through these different tabs using the scroll wheel. If your mouse is provided with a scroll wheel between your two mouse buttons, I can move the scroll wheel back and forth, and that will scroll through all the different tabs. I'm just sort of moving the scroll wheel on my mouse back and forth, and that goes through all the different tabs. Make sure that the Home tab is the default tab. That's where we spend most of our time. So make sure that you're back at the Home tab. Cool trick number 3 I want to show you with this ribbon is you can actually activate all the ribbon commands with the keyboard. This is one of those overlooked features not many Excel users know about. If I tap the Alt key on the keyboard, just Alt, a bunch of letters appear on my tabs, like P for page layout, M for formulas, N for insert. So let's say if I wanted to activate the page layout tab, which is indicated by a little P up here, I'll just hit the letter P, and that brings up the page layout tab. And I want to change my orientation, I can hit the letter O, and then arrow down, and I can change my orientation. just like that, using my arrow keys to go from command to command. I'll hit escape a few times to get out of the keyboard mode here, and I'll go back to my home tab. Home tab's where we spend most of our time. Below the ribbon is your formula bar. This has the name box and the input line. We'll sort of learn more about that here in just a few minutes. Now the main worksheet area is this grid of columns and rows. Columns and rows. Your rows are numbered 1 through 10, 11, 12, 13. Letters going across the top, A, B, C, D, E, F, G. And then each individual block is called a cell. And every cell has a cell address. I'm just using my mouse and clicking around these different cells, and the address is the column letter and the row number. Column and row number. Like I'm sitting on cell E5 right now. E5. How do I know that? Well, the E is orange over here, and it's orange over here. Also, it says it up here in what's called the name box. What's called the name box. Yeah, the formula bar actually consists of the name box and the input line. Alrighty. Now I'll go back over here to cell A1. Sometimes I refer to cell A1 as the home cell. That's the top left corner of your worksheet. Let's take a look and see how big this worksheet is. I'm going to hold down the arrow key, the down arrow key, to move my cell cursor. And I go down to row 100, row 200, right there. Yeah, there's literally thousands and thousands of rows. In fact, I'm going to tap the end key, E-N-D, the end key on the keyboard, and hit down arrow. And there's actually 1,048,576 rows, as you can see right down here. 1,048,576. Now, the real world, you're not going to see a worksheet that's anywhere near that big. The olden days of spreadsheets, it was about, actually, in the early 90s with Lotus 123, it was 8,192 rows. Now with Excel 2010, you have over 1 million rows. I'll do a Control Home here on the keyboard, and that takes me back up to cell A1. Now let's go across our worksheet. I'll hit the arrow keys a few times, and I get down to the end of the alphabet, and the alphabet wraps over itself. A, A, B, A, C, A, D, and so on. And I'll just keep going across, and it just keeps wrapping over and over again. Now there is a brick wall eventually. It doesn't go on forever. I'll do an end and a right arrow, and there's my last column right there, XFD. To sort of put a number on that, it's 16,384 individual columns. 16,384 columns by 1,048,576 rows. That's a very, very, very big worksheet. I'll do another Control Home here. I'd like to do lots of keyboard shortcuts, and I'll be posting a keyboard shortcut sheet on Moodle, probably either with this lecture or the next lecture. But keep your eyes open for that. Now we sort of know the dimensions of the worksheet. If you actually want to see how many rows and columns there are, there's a Select All button right here, directly above the number 1 and to the left of the letter A, and you can click and hold it, and there's your number of rows by your number of columns. You're over 1 million rows and over 16,000 columns. I'll release my mouse there and click on cell A1, and I'm back here to my home cell. At the bottom of your screen is the status bar. Along here, actually just above the status bar, you see your individual sheet tabs. By default, you are given 3 worksheets in each workbook. Excel likes to call their files workbooks, just like their documents in Word for Windows. Excel likes to call them workbooks. And you're given 3 sheets: Sheet 1, Sheet 2, and Sheet 3. And we'll be dealing with working with multiple worksheets a little bit later on in the course. Now, again, at the very bottom, we've got our status bar, and this has your mode indicator, which we're in ready mode right now, and it also has your zoom setting over here in the lower right corner. And you can zoom in and out of your worksheet, sort of just like that. Sort of a neater way to zoom in and out of your worksheet is my cursor's right here, I should say my mouse is right here in the middle of the worksheet. I'll hold the Control button down on the keyboard with my left hand, then I'll move the scroll wheel back and forth, and that zooms me in and out of my worksheet. That's pushing the scroll wheel forward and then the scroll wheel backward, and that zooms me out of my worksheet. Not just an Excel thing, that's a computer thing. That works in PowerPoint, the Internet, Word for Windows, all that Microsoft stuff. Control scroll wheel will zoom you in and out. Let me zoom back out to 100% here, and my worksheet's back to the default view. Okay, and that's a little bit about our application window. Now, when you're working with cells on the worksheet, like we talked about earlier, C3, D3, E3, F3. Sometimes you work with multiple cells. Like I'll highlight a group of cells like this by clicking and dragging the mouse. When I'm working with multiple cells, we call that a range of cells. And just like a cell has a cell address, a range has a range address. Cell A1, and in the lower right corner is F15, so this entire block would be A1 colon F15. That's how it's expressed. Watch the PowerPoint presentation that goes along with this lecture, and it kind of breaks down everything that I'm talking about here. Alright, and that's just a little bit about our worksheet. Now, navigating the worksheet can get kind of daunting sometimes. For instance, what if you want to put your cell cursor in a cell very, very far away? For example, I want to put my cell cursor in F2000, very, very far away. A lot of down arrows if you want to do it that way. Better yet, I'll click up here in the name box, right up here, and I'll type in F2000 and hit enter. And that jumps my cell cursor down to F column and then row 2000. Also take note that the column letter always comes first. F9, A1, B3. It's never 3B or 12C. Okay, the column letter always comes first. I'll do a control home here. In addition, you can also type range addresses into the name box up here. Let's see, I'll type in A1 colon A10. Real simple range. A1 colon A10. Sometimes they refer to the colon as a delimiter, okay, but I think a colon is probably just as simple enough. I'll hit enter right there, and that whole range highlights. Okay, let's do a big range. I'll click up here in my name box, and I'll type in A1 colon D5000, and hit enter, and that whole block highlights all the way down to row 5000. I won't scroll all the way down there, but it goes all the way down to row 5000. Let me do a control home here, and that'll deselect my range. So that's a little bit about the worksheet area. For those of you that have done accounting before, spreadsheets sort of mimic the olden days of the accountant's columnar pads. People would do payroll like on a ledger. They'd have these big ledger books, and they would open them up, and they'd have all the names down the left-hand side, and all the hourly rate and hours worked going across the top, and that would be your ledger, and you would fill it all in. Well, that was all fine and dandy, but what would happen is if you made one change to somebody's hourly rate, you would have to go in to all the totals and all the averages and recalculate everything, and you'd have a big eraser on your desk, and you'd erase it in 7 different places and recalculate it. Well, with an Excel spreadsheet, you don't have to do that. If you make one change, somebody makes $15 an hour, now they make $15.50 an hour, all the changes sort of filter and permeate throughout the entire worksheet. Okay? Now, the next thing I want to do is sort of talk about building a worksheet for the first time. Building a worksheet for the first time. I sort of use a little 5-step procedure when it comes to building a worksheet. The first thing I do is I sort of identify what the worksheet should do. Well, I want to calculate bowling averages for my company bowling league. I want to calculate averages for my students' quizzes. I want to calculate the profit made based on money taken in and money going out. $10,000 came in, $8,000 went out, we have $2,000 profit. I always identify the purpose of the worksheet. Okay, I want to calculate my son's batting average for Little League. Always have a worksheet purpose. That way, when you're building your worksheet and it's complete, you go back to the purpose and make sure that you solved your problem and the worksheet works for you. Now, Excel's a little different than other applications. It involves lots of different disciplines. Obviously, you got to know computers, copy and paste, cut and paste, saving files, deleting files, copying files, all that stuff. You got to know math, obviously. Joe Blow makes $10 an hour. He works 40 hours a week. How do you multiply that? Well, 10 times 40 is $400, and that's basically a lot of the math that's involved. And you sort of also have to know business terminology, a depreciation schedule. Somebody will say, hey, we have this $200,000 X-ray machine, and I want to do a straight line depreciation schedule over the next 20 years of the lifespan of the piece of equipment. So lots of business terminology. So spreadsheets have a lot of disciplines going into it. Okay, and we're going to talk about all those different disciplines as we go through this course. All right. Now let's talk about our first worksheet. Let's go ahead and get started here. Our first worksheet, we'll keep it simple. We'll do a little quarterly report for the ABC company. We sell computers, we fix computers, and we train people on computers. And we took in money for the first 3 months of 2011. And then also we've had some expenses. We've had lease on the building, we've had a telephone bill, a utilities bill, and then I want to have an overall monthly profit and loss for each month, and then an overall profit and loss for the quarter. So that's sort of the purpose of our worksheet. Now, step number one is our purpose. Step number two is you sort of gather and compile and enter in all the raw data. You type in your worksheet heading. You type in all your names and addresses or whatever it is you're doing. You sort of just hard type everything into the spreadsheet, and that pretty much compromises step number two. Step number three will be doing all your calculations. Okay, all right. Joe Blow makes $10 an hour. He works 40 hours a week. Then your formula would be multiplying that 10 times the 40 to calculate your gross pay. And that's your formula section. Usually the hardest or trickiest section of the worksheet is getting your formulas in there. And then step number four is to format and verify your worksheet. Formatting your worksheet basically means putting dollar signs on your numbers, commas, aligning your data so it looks pleasing to the eye, aesthetics and borders and just general formatting, fonts and font sizes, just general formatting techniques to make your worksheet look good. And then also verify. Okay, you want to make sure that the worksheet looks great. You got a student and he or she has 100, a 90, and a 95 for their quizzes. Well, they shouldn't have a 33 average, or they shouldn't have a 140 average. They should have about a 90 average or a 92 average. Yeah, always verify your answers. Make sure that your answers make sense. Somebody makes $10 an hour. They work 40 hours in a week. They should not have a $40 million paycheck. Okay, they should have a $400 paycheck. So you want to verify your worksheet as well. Make sure you do have the right answers. In the real world, a lot of times people hit that enter key on their formula, and just because a number shows up, this must be the right answer. Okay, well, you want to verify the worksheet. Make sure you get the right answers. Then step number five is print out your worksheets. Usually when you have an Excel spreadsheet, you want to print out the report of some kind. The payroll report or the depreciation report, your income statement, if you're doing your income statement, stuff for accounting. All right, so the last step is to print your document and make sure it looks good. Okay, now the purpose of our worksheet, as I said a minute ago, is to calculate the monthly profit and loss for ABC Company for the first 3 months of 2011. That's our purpose. Let's go ahead and get started, and I'll start typing in my data into my worksheet here. Now basically there's only two things you can type into a cell. You can type text or values. Okay, obviously what else is there? Text are like words, January, February, March, April, May, June. Values are numbers. Okay, actually values fall into three categories: numbers, formulas, and functions. Okay, numbers are like 50,000, 35, 28.1, 2.5. Formulas are calculations. Multiply this times this, add these two numbers together. And then functions are more advanced formulas, which we'll get into as well in this course. Okay, but let's go ahead and start our first worksheet here. I'm going to position my cell cursor in A1, and I'll type in the little title of our company here. Lots of times when you build a worksheet, you want to have a little worksheet heading. So I'll type in ABC Company, and notice it's appearing in two places. It's appearing in the cell and also in the input line up here. What you actually key in will always appear up here in the input line. When I'm done typing, I'll hit the enter key, and that does two things. It assigns the entry to the cell, and it moves the cell cursor down to the next cell. Now I'm in cell A2. I'll type in what this is. Let's see, this is a 2011 first quarter profit and loss statement. Enter. I'll type in my next heading. Let's see who it's prepared by. Bill Burke with me. And when was it prepared? Whoops. On, let's see, we'll say April 1st, 2011. There we go. So now we have our worksheet heading. Who are we? ABC Company. What is this? The 2011 first quarter profit and loss statement. Who made it? Bill Berquist, and when was it made? 4/1/2011. Looks good. I'll continue on here. Now we're on step 2 on the phase of building our worksheet is entering in all the raw data. I'll jump down a cell here, A7, and I'll type in income, enter, and then I'll do sales, enter, services, and training. And I'll hit enter twice, and type in the word total there. And I'll use my arrow keys to navigate to my other cells here. We'll type in January, and right arrow, February, and March, and then total. And I'll zoom in just a little bit here so I can see it better. Control scroll wheel again. There we go. Alright, we took in $10,000 in sales for January, so I'll type in 10,000 here and hit enter. Take note how your data is lining up in the worksheet. By default, labels are to the left and numbers are to the right. Numbers are to the right to keep the decimal point in line if you have one. Now you can change the alignment to whatever you want after the fact, but by default we've got the labels to the left and your numbers to the right. I'll continue on filling this in. We took in 5,000 for services, and we took in 3,000 for training. That was for the month of January. Now I'll go to February here, and we took in 12,000 and 6,500 and 2,500 for training. We took in 15,000, and March 5,000, and then 3,500 for training. Looks good. And there's our income entered for the first quarter of 2011 for our sales, service, and training. I'll continue on here, and I'll scroll down a little bit, okay? We'll do our expenses. I'll type expenses over here, enter. Let's see, we had lease on the building, we had salaries, and we had the utility bill. And then total. I'll go back up here. I'm sitting on cell B as in Brian 14, and January, February, and March. Now there are quicker ways to enter in those months, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. I'm going to type in the word total here, and let's see. Now the lease is $8,000 every single month, so I'll just type in 8,000. It's a fixed expense. Yeah, in business you got fixed expenses and variable expenses. Fixed expenses are the same every month, and variable expenses change. Like the utility bill would be a variable expense. Let's see, salaries was 4,000. And utilities was 2,500, 2,000, and 1,800. There we go. Now the basic worksheet is complete. The basic worksheet is complete. Now our next thing to do is probably save this file. Now when you want to save your file, we have to go to our file button right up here, and we have to use the save as option. You actually have two save options, save and save as. Save as is when you're saving it for the very first time, and then save is for subsequent. We'll just call it quarterly report. So I'll go up here to file and pick save as, and I'll go ahead and just type in, let's see, quarterly report. There we go. Save as type, Excel workbook, hit save, and now my workbook is saved, and it says it up here in the title bar, top center of the screen there. Alright, now the workbook is saved, and I got all my raw data plugged in. Now we can move into step 3, which is actually doing our calculations now. If you look at our worksheet here, we have 4 calculations that we need. I got a total over here, a total over here, a total over here, and a total over here in row 19. Alright, so totals for individual totals, and then monthly totals for income, and then individual totals and monthly totals for my expenses. Let's see here. I'll go to E8, that's my first empty cell, and with the mouse right in the middle of that cell, I'm going to click and drag down, and that highlights all 3 cells, and that's a range address. Remember earlier, any block of highlighted cells is called a range, and specifically that is range E8 through E10. E8 through E10. When I have my range highlighted, I can go up here to my ribbon, and I can click my auto sum button right there. It's the sigma symbol, I believe, and you can click on that, and that automatically totals up your cells and puts them right in there. I'll do the same thing down here, beginning in B12, and go across, hit my auto sum button, and boom, I've got my grand total. So it looks like we took in $62,500 for the quarter. And we'll sort of mimic those steps for our expenses here. I'll go to cell E15 and highlight that, and I'll hit the auto sum button again. Then I'll go to B19 and highlight across and hit auto sum, and it looks good. We spent $42,300. Now, it's no rocket science here. We obviously made a profit, right? We made $62,000, but we also spent $42,000. And I want to see the actual individual amounts. So we're not quite done with this worksheet yet. I'll go to cell A22 here, and I'll type in profit / loss, and hit the arrow key, and I'm over there. Now, our next formula is going to be a little bit complicated. We're not summing anything up. We use the auto sum button over here because it just puts the sum. It puts a sum formula in here, and it sums up or adds up all those cells to the left of it. Well, here I want to do some subtraction. Basically, when I do a formula in Excel, I kind of break it down into 3 phases. I say what I want to do in plain English, I say what I want to do numerically, then I say what I want to do Excel-wise, using Excel terms. Well, to calculate my January profit or my loss, I take the total of the income, which is $18,000, and subtract $14,500. So that's it numerically. I want to take $18,000 minus $14,500. Now, how do we do that in Excel? Well, we could use the numbers, 18,000 minus 14,500, but if one of my numbers changes up here, my answer will not change. Rather than using the actual numbers, we're going to use the cell addresses in which they occupy. Notice that the 18,000 cell is in cell B as in Brian 12. B as in Brian 12. So I want to take the value in B12 and subtract the value in B19. And that'll give me my profit or my loss for January. Now, when you do a formula in Excel, we begin all calculations with an equal sign. So I'm going to hit the equal sign on the keyboard here. That puts it into my cell. And I'm going to type in B12, uppercase, lowercase, does not matter. And B12, notice it's blue, and it also highlights it in blue up here as well. It's sort of a little guide to walk you through the formula creation process. Then I'll hit the dash key, and then I'll type in B19. Dash means minus. So equals B12 minus B19, looks good, and I'll hit enter. And there's my answer of 3,500. Now, I'll hit the up arrow to put my cursor back on that cell, and notice the answer is in the cell, 3,500, but it's also up here exactly as you typed it in on the formula bar. Whenever you want to see exactly what you keyed in, always click the cell, then look up here on the input line and on the formula bar, and that'll tell you what you keyed in. Alright, looks good. Now I've got my 3,500 here. I want to get my other totals over here, or my other profits and losses for the C, D, and the E column. Now we don't have to type in each formula individually. I can copy the existing formula. Since they're all in adjacent columns, this makes it for a very easy task. Let me zoom in just a little bit here to sort of make the cell cursor bigger for you. And if you look in the lower right corner, there's a little bump. That's actually officially called the fill handle. I'm going to place my mouse on the fill handle, and I get a very skinny plus sign. And I'm going to click and drag my mouse all the way across to the end, and that'll copy all my formulas. And it looks like we have an overall profit of $20,200. $20,200. I'll zoom back out so I can see the entire worksheet, and we're looking pretty good. Now, we've done a lot of the worksheet, a lot more to the worksheet since we saved it. So I'm going to do a Control S again, Control S, and that'll save my worksheet using the same name. Once you've used Save As once, we can just keep using Control S, Control S, Control S, keep saving it over and over again. Now, I do show you a lot of keyboard shortcuts in this course. If you're not really big on keyboard shortcuts, you can also use the ribbon. If you look above the ribbon, actually, there's what's called the Quick Access Toolbar, and there's a little disk button right there, and you can click on that, and that saves the file as well. That's also where your undo and your redo buttons are, and you can add more buttons to the Quick Access Toolbar by clicking the little down pointing triangle, and I'll pick New, I'll pick Open, I'll do Quick Print, and voila, you can sort of increase the number of buttons on your Quick Access Toolbar up there. Sort of replaces the toolbar from the olden days of Excel. Alright, our worksheet's looking pretty good. The file is saved, and let's go back to the purpose of the worksheet now. The original purpose of the worksheet was to calculate the individual monthly profit and losses for the first quarter of 2011. And we've done that, haven't we? I've got all my monthly amounts in here, all their totals, for my income and expenses, and I've got my profit and losses. So we're looking good. The purpose of the worksheet has been solved. Unfortunately, the worksheet doesn't look very good. I'm going to go to File here and hit Print, and that'll show me a little print preview screen. Sort of a new feature in Excel. They sort of combine the print preview screen along with all the print options. In the olden days, way back in 2003, they would have two separate things. They'd have your print preview window, then you'd have your print dialog box, a little window that would pop up. Well, they sort of combine that into one screen now, and we call that the backstage view. And I've got all my print options over here, and I have my print preview over here. The worksheet looks pretty good, but it's kind of bland looking. We're going to snazz it up just a little bit here with some basic formatting, and once we do that, we'll complete this first lecture. Okay, so let me hit I'll hit the escape key or click on File, and that takes me back out of print preview mode. Note the dotted line over here. This is the page break. All right, so anything that appears over here will appear on page 2. So I'm going to be cautious to make sure that nothing goes on the other side of that page break line there. Let me scroll back up to the top. When it comes to formatting a worksheet, I kind of break it down into 3 phases. I format the entire worksheet, then I format my words, then I format my numbers. Okay, sort of like that. Now, when I say format the worksheet, I basically mean widen your columns and heighten your rows. We're going to widen some of the columns here. The worksheet looks good, but it's sort of cramped all together here in the upper left corner of the page. I'm going to place my mouse right up here on the frame, right there between the A and the B, and you can click and drag and widen the column. I'll widen it to like 14 characters, and then release. Now, there's actually 3 ways you can widen your columns. You can widen just one column, which is what I just did. You can widen multiple columns, or you can widen every column in the whole worksheet, all 16,000. That's one option. I really don't do a whole lot. Personally, I just either widen one column or multiple columns. Now, the A column looks good. It's 14 characters wide. Every column is the default width of 8.43 characters. But we'll widen January through total here, which is columns B through E. I'm going to highlight January across to total. Notice now I did not grab the fill handle. That's only for copying formulas. I want the big fat plus sign here, and I'll just drag across. And I'll go to the Format button up here in the ribbon. Format, and then column width. And I'll type in a 12 characters wide, and hit enter. And that makes my worksheet a little bit wider. Just like we can widen columns, we can also heighten rows. By default, every row is 15 points high. So I'm going to highlight A7 all the way down to A19 here, and go to my Format button again up here in the ribbon, and I'm going to pick row height. And there's the default setting of 15. I'll just change it to 20. Not a real big increase, but it'll make the worksheet easier to read. And hit enter. And there is my worksheet formatted with my columns and my row heights. Looking a lot better. I'll do a Control S and save the file. I do Control S a lot. Every natural pause I do a Control S. One thing you don't want to do is lose your file to a power outage or something like that, so I do Control S all the time. Alright, now our next thing is to format our words. Let's see here. We'll do some real simple formatting here. I'll go up to cell A1, and the default font and font size is Calibri 11 point, and then there's my bold, my italics, my underline. There's a borders button right here, my font color, your alignment. And we touch on all of these. Okay, let's see here. I'll do it real simple. We'll make our heading here 20 points, bold italic, and I'll change the font color to red. There we go. I'll go to my next cell here, and I'll make it 18 point, bold italic, and make it red. And I'll go to A3 there. I'll make it 14 point, bold italic, and red. I'm getting smaller and smaller as I go down the headings here. And last but not least, my little date cell there will be, I don't know, maybe 12 point, bold italic, and red font color. Looks good. If I do a print preview, I can actually do a Control F2 on the keyboard. That'll give me a print preview. The worksheet's looking a lot better now. Okay, we're getting there. I'll hit Escape to get back out to my worksheet. Now the next thing we'll do is we'll do our labels down here in row 7. I'm going to go to A7 here, just drag across, and we'll keep it simple. I'll center align it, my alignment buttons. Yeah, if you notice, the ribbon's broken up into groups, isn't it? I got my clipboard group, the font group, the alignment group, the number group, style, cells, and editing. In my alignment group, I'll click on center, and that aligns my column headings in the center there. I'll hit bold. Looks good. And let's put a border underneath our headings to sort of set them apart from the data. The borders button has a little drop down triangle here. I'll click on that. And I'll go down about halfway down and I'll pick thick bottom border. Looks good. Maybe a little shading. There's a shading button right up here. Looks like a little bucket of paint. It's called the fill color actually. I'll click that and I'll make it like a very, very light red, light reddish. There we go. Looks good. Now, I'd like to make my expenses look just like that. Now, in the real world, a lot of people would just highlight this and then apply all the formats, but there's sort of a cool way to do it, is I can highlight the existing formatting, single click my Format Painter button up here. There's a little button called Format Painter, and you can copy the way something looks from point A to point B. So I'll click my Painter button, and then single click the word expenses. Notice I'm not dragging across it, I'm just single clicking on it, and that makes it look just like the top half. I'll do a little Control F2 here for print preview, and the worksheet's looking pretty good. I'll hit escape. Now let's do our numbers. All of your number formatting is up here on the ribbon in the number group. You got your $ button, your percent button, your comma, your increased decimals, and your decreased decimals. Those are all your number formatting. The increased decimals and decrease is very good. If you want to, either have 3 decimal places or 2 decimal places or no decimal places, that's the buttons we use right here. Now this top row, I do want to have $, but I don't want to have any decimals, so I'm going to highlight, and that's range address what? B8 through E8, and I'll hit my $ button. And notice now I get 3 things. I get $, commas, and 2 decimals. Well, the $, and commas are fine, but I don't want the 2 decimal places, so I'll go up here and click my decrease decimal button 2 times. There we go. Now for the other numbers, I do want commas, but no $, and no decimal places. So I'll go to B9 and drag across and go all the way down just like that. What range address is that? B9 through E12. Upper left corner, lower right corner is always how you identify your ranges. We work a lot with ranges in this course, so I really want to emphasize all the different range addresses. This is B9 through E12. And up on the ribbon there, just after percent is my comma style. So I'll click on comma style and decrease decimals twice. And now my numbers look pretty good for the top half of my worksheet. The bottom half, I'll sort of just mimic the same procedures I did for here. My top row will be $. You can sort of see why you wouldn't want $signs everywhere. Let me highlight all of this and put $signs on here. The worksheet looks very cluttered and busy. Very, very cluttered. Kind of difficult to read. I'll hit my undo button up here. There we go. And I'll just do my top row and hit $signs, decrease decimal button twice. Then all the rest of the numbers will be comma style, and then decrease decimals. Looks pretty good. Maybe I want to have my row headings bolded. I'll highlight that range right there. That's A8 through A12 and hit bold. And I'll come down here and hit bold. There we go. And I'll scroll up there. I'll zoom out a little bit. I'll do Control Scroll Wheel. And there is basically our first worksheet. I'll save our file, and I'll do a Control F2, and there is our first worksheet. Not too bad. I'll go back to the purpose of the worksheet. Has the purpose been solved? Do we have the overall profit and loss for each month for the first quarter and an overall profit and loss? We most certainly do. The bottom line here is down here in row 22. We made $3,500 in January, $7,000 in February, $9,700 in March, and we have an overall profit of $20,200. Now, once the worksheet is complete, we can sort of play around with it a little bit. Let's see if we make some changes. Let's see if our answers update. Notice our profit here is $20,200. I'll go up here to cell B8, and we really took in $12,000. So I'll type in $12,000 and hit enter. And notice now my total changed over here, which also caused it to change down here, and also down here and over here. So all those different places got updated. In the olden days, you'd have to sit there and erase all those different occurrences and update it yourself. But now with a spreadsheet, I can go ahead and just make one change and the whole worksheet updates automatically. Let's say here I'll go to my February utilities and I'll make it $4,000. And I'm back down to 20,200 again. Pretty cool. And I'll zoom back out. I always put my cell cursor back in cell A1, and I'll save it. And I'll print preview it one last time. I'll do a Control F2 here. And I'm satisfied the worksheet looks pretty good. I'll hit Escape here. And that completes our first lecture on Excel 2010.